In today's world, it's so easy to get lost in the noise around us. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others, whether it's through social media, in our workplaces, or even in our personal lives. We see what others have, what they're achieving, and we often feel that we need to match up or outdo them. But this mindset can lead to frustration, anxiety, and a feeling of always chasing after something that isn't truly fulfilling. What if we told you that the path to true happiness and peace starts within yourself, not outside of you? The Buddhist teachings are like a roadmap, guiding us away from distraction and comparison, and toward inner peace, mindfulness, and self-awareness. In this video, we'll explore 5 key lessons from Buddhism that encourage us to shift our focus inward, to stop worrying about what others are doing, and to start paying attention to our own thoughts, actions, and personal growth. These teachings can transform the way we live and lead us toward a more peaceful, fulfilling life. So, take a moment to clear your mind, take a deep breath, and join us as we explore the wisdom of Buddha and the importance of focusing on yourself. Lesson 1. The Noble Eightfold Path. Our first lesson comes from one of the Buddha's most fundamental teachings, the Noble Eightfold Path. Now this might sound complicated, but don't worry, it's actually quite simple and very practical. The Noble Eightfold Path is like a guide to living a balanced and ethical life. It's a set of 8 practices that help us find the middle way between extremes. And this path is all about focusing on ourselves, not in a selfish way, but in a way that helps us grow and develop as better human beings. So, what are these 8 steps? Let's break them down. Right understanding. This means seeing the world as it truly is. It's about understanding that everything is connected and that suffering is a part of life. Instead of getting caught up in blaming others for our problems, we begin to see the bigger picture and focus on our own perceptions. Right intention. This is about being clear with our intentions. It means having thoughts that are free from harmful desires, anger, or greed. We focus on cultivating kindness and compassion toward ourselves and others. Right speech. How often do we find ourselves speaking out of anger or frustration, especially when comparing ourselves to others? Right speech encourages us to speak truthfully, kindly, and with purpose. Right action. This is all about behaving ethically. It means not harming others and living in a way that reflects our values. It's about making sure that our actions align with our inner beliefs. Right livelihood. This step asks us to earn a living in a way that doesn't harm others. Whether it's in business or personal life, we focus on ethical living, making sure our work aligns with our values. Right effort. This is about being determined in our personal growth. It's about putting in effort to develop positive qualities like patience and mindfulness, while letting go of negative habits like comparing ourselves to others or feeling jealous. Right mindfulness. This is where meditation and awareness come in. It's about being fully present in each moment. Instead of worrying about others, mindfulness helps us to stay focused on ourselves and our present experience. Right concentration. This final step is about developing deep concentration through meditation. It helps us calm our mind and focus inward, allowing us to find peace within ourselves, regardless of what's happening around us. So, why is the Noble Eightfold Path important when we talk about focusing on ourselves? Because it teaches us that our personal development and happiness come from within. Each step of the path guides us to focus on our own actions, thoughts, and intentions, rather than getting lost in what others are doing. by practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, we can shift our energy toward becoming more aware, mindful, and compassionate. And ultimately, this inner focus leads us to greater peace and happiness. Lesson 2. The story of the mustard seed. The next lesson comes from one of the Buddha's most famous stories, and it offers a powerful message about focusing on our own experience of suffering. The story is about a woman named Kisa Gotami. She was a young mother, and like any mother, she loved her child deeply. But tragically, her child fell ill and passed away. Overcome with grief, Kisa Gotami couldn't accept that her child was gone. She carried the body of her child from house to house, asking if anyone could help her bring him back to life. Eventually, she went to the Buddha, hoping for a miracle. Instead of performing a miracle, the Buddha gave her a task. He told her to go and find a mustard seed from a household that had never experienced death. Kisa Gotami was filled with hope, thinking this would solve her problem. She went from house to house, asking for a mustard seed. But at each home, she found the same response. Every family had experienced loss in some way. After searching for a long time, Kisa Gotami realized the truth: suffering and death are a part of life. She returned to the Buddha and understood his teaching. The Buddha used this story to show her that, instead of focusing on how unfair her loss seemed compared to others, she needed to accept her own suffering and find peace with it. This story teaches us a valuable lesson about focusing on ourselves rather than comparing our pain to others. We all experience suffering in life, whether it's losing a loved one, facing challenges, or dealing with personal hardships. But instead of feeling isolated or dwelling on how others seem to have it easier, Buddhism encourages us to focus on understanding our own suffering. When we stop comparing our pain to others and start accepting it as part of the human experience, we can begin to heal. The story of Kisa Gotami reminds us that while suffering is inevitable, peace comes from within when we learn to accept and understand our own struggles. Lesson 3. The parable of the two arrows. Have you ever noticed how sometimes our reactions to problems make things worse? This is where the Buddha's parable of the two arrows becomes so relevant. Imagine this. You're walking through a forest, and suddenly you're struck by an arrow. It hurts a lot. But then, imagine that, right after being hit, you shoot yourself with a second arrow. The second arrow causes even more pain than the first one. Now, this might sound strange. Why would anyone shoot themselves with a second arrow? But according to the Buddha, this is exactly what we do when we react to life's challenges with negative emotions like anger, jealousy, or frustration. The first arrow represents the unavoidable suffering in life. This could be something like losing a job, facing an illness, or going through a breakup. These things happen to everyone, and we can't always avoid them. But the second arrow is how we respond to these problems. If we react with anger, blame others, or hold on to grudges, we're only adding more suffering on top of the pain we're already experiencing. For example, imagine a situation where someone insults you. The insult is the first arrow. It hurts your feelings. But if you start dwelling on it, thinking about how unfair it was, how that person doesn't respect you, or how you should get back at them, you're shooting yourself with a second arrow. The emotional turmoil you create is often worse than the original insult itself. So, how does this teaching help us focus on ourselves? It reminds us that we have control over how we respond to life's difficulties. Instead of getting caught up in what others say or do, we can learn to manage our own reactions. By practicing mindfulness, we can catch ourselves before shooting that second arrow and avoid unnecessary suffering. The Buddha's lesson of the two arrows teaches us to focus on controlling our own emotions and reactions rather than letting external events or other people's behavior dictate our happiness. It's about learning to pause, reflect, and choose a response that brings peace rather than pain. Lesson 4. The mirror of the mind. Another powerful metaphor the Buddha used was the mirror of the mind. He taught that our mind is like a mirror. It reflects whatever we focus on. But just like a mirror can get cloudy with dirt, our mind can get clouded by negative emotions, judgments, and distractions. Think about it. When you spend too much time worrying about what others are doing, comparing yourself to them, or judging them, your mind becomes cluttered. You lose the ability to see clearly. Your thoughts become foggy, and instead of focusing on what truly matters, your own personal growth, you get caught up in things that don't bring you peace or happiness. The Buddha taught that the way to clear this mental mirror is through mindfulness and meditation. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to notice our thoughts and emotions without getting swept away by them. It's like wiping the mirror clean so that we can see ourselves and the world more clearly. Instead of focusing on others, what they have, what they're doing, or how they're living their lives, mindfulness teaches us to focus on our own mind. What are we thinking? How are we feeling? What can we do to improve ourselves? By focusing on our own inner world, we gain clarity and insight, which helps us live a more peaceful and balanced life. One of the key practices in Buddhism is meditation, where we learn to quiet the mind and observe our thoughts. Through meditation, we can clean the mirror of our mind and let go of the unnecessary worries and comparisons that cloud our judgment. Over time, this practice helps us focus more on ourselves, on our own growth, actions, and happiness, rather than being distracted by others. So, when you find yourself feeling jealous, anxious, or frustrated because of what others are doing, remember the mirror of the mind. Focus on cleaning your own reflection, and you'll find that inner peace comes much more easily. Lesson 5. The simile of the lute. The last lesson we'll explore today is one of balance, and it comes from a teaching the Buddha gave using the simile of the lute. A lute, as you may know, is a musical instrument with strings. And in this teaching, the Buddha explained that just like the strings of a lute need to be tuned correctly, we too need balance in our lives. Imagine trying to play a lute with strings that are too tight. They'll snap. If they're too loose, they won't produce any sound at all. In the same way, if we focus too much on the external world, on comparing ourselves to others, on achieving more and more without considering our own well-being, we become tense, stressed, and anxious. On the other hand, if we don't focus on ourselves at all, we can become complacent, unmotivated, or even depressed. The Buddha's lesson here is simple. We need to find the middle way. This means balancing our focus on ourselves in a healthy, constructive way. It's about taking care of our own needs, nurturing our own growth, and practicing mindfulness, but not becoming so self-centered that we ignore the world around us or neglect our responsibilities. One way to achieve this balance is by practicing right effort, one of the steps in the Noble Eightfold Path that we discussed earlier. Right effort means putting energy into what is helpful and positive, while avoiding things that drain our energy or cause harm. It's about finding that balance where we're putting in effort to improve ourselves, but not overdoing it to the point of exhaustion or stress. Another important aspect of balance is self-compassion. Often, when we focus on ourselves, we can become overly critical or harsh. But self-compassion teaches us to treat ourselves with kindness, just as we would a close friend. It reminds us that it's okay to make mistakes, and that personal growth is a journey, not a race. So, when you feel that the strings of your own life are too tight or too loose, remember the simile of the lute. Find that middle path, where you're focusing on yourself in a way that is healthy, balanced, and kind. Lesson 6. The teaching of impermanence. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is the concept of impermanence. This teaching reminds us that everything in life is constantly changing. Nothing stays the same. Our circumstances, our feelings, even the people around us. And while this might seem unsettling at first, the Buddha taught that accepting impermanence is key to finding peace within ourselves. Think about how often we get caught up in what others are doing or achieving. We compare ourselves to people who seem to have it all: success, happiness, wealth. But the truth is, everything we see is temporary. The success someone has today might not last tomorrow. The challenges we face right now will also change. When we hold on to things or people as though they are permanent, we set ourselves up for suffering. By focusing on ourselves and recognizing the impermanent nature of everything, we can let go of unhealthy attachments. Instead of comparing ourselves to others or trying to hold on to situations, we begin to appreciate the present moment as it is. We realize that just as happiness and success are temporary, so too are hardships and challenges. This understanding frees us from the constant cycle of comparison and attachment. Meditation on impermanence can be a powerful practice. The next time you feel overwhelmed by what's happening around you, take a deep breath and remind yourself, this too shall pass. Whether it's a good moment or a difficult one, impermanence teaches us that nothing lasts forever. When we focus on ourselves and our personal growth, we can learn to move through life's changes with grace and acceptance. Impermanence doesn't mean we should be indifferent to life, but rather that we should embrace the beauty of each moment without clinging to it. The more we internalize this teaching, the more we'll be able to focus on ourselves and live peacefully in a world that's constantly in flux. Lesson 7. Letting go of judgment. Another important lesson the Buddha taught is the practice of letting go of judgment. It's so easy for us to judge others, whether it's their behavior, their choices, or their success. But judgment, especially when based on comparison, only distracts us from focusing on our own journey. When we judge others, we're often projecting our own insecurities or fears onto them. Maybe we criticize someone because they have something we want, or perhaps we feel superior because we think we're doing better than them in some way. But this habit of judging only fuels negative emotions like jealousy, resentment, or pride. These emotions cloud our mind and prevent us from seeing clearly. Buddha's teachings encourage us to practice non-judgment. This means observing others and the world without labeling things as good or bad, better or worse. It's about recognizing that everyone is on their own path, just as we are on ours. Instead of focusing on others' actions or lives, we should turn inward and examine our own thoughts, emotions, and actions. One way to practice letting go of judgment is through mindfulness. The next time you catch yourself criticizing or comparing, pause and ask yourself, why am I judging this? Is it because I'm feeling insecure about something in my own life? Is it because I'm holding on to a belief that I need to be better than someone else to feel worthy? When we focus on understanding our own reactions rather than judging others, we begin to cultivate compassion. We see that everyone, including ourselves, is dealing with their own struggles and challenges. And instead of wasting energy on judgment, we can use that energy to improve ourselves and grow. Letting go of judgment frees our mind from unnecessary negativity and helps us focus on what truly matters, our own growth, happiness, and inner peace. As we come to the end of this video, let's take a moment to reflect on the lessons we've explored today. The Buddhist teachings offer a path to true happiness and peace, and they all point us toward one essential truth: focus on yourself, not others. The Noble Eightfold Path reminds us to work on our own thoughts, actions, and mindfulness. The story of the mustard seed teaches us that suffering is a shared experience, but it's through understanding our own suffering that we grow. The parable of the two arrows helps us see that we can control our reactions to life's challenges, avoiding unnecessary pain. The mirror of the mind encourages us to clear away distractions and focus on our own inner world. And the simile of the lute teaches us the importance of balance, focusing on ourselves in a healthy, compassionate way. In a world where it's easy to get caught up in what others are doing, Buddhism offers a different path. It teaches us to turn inward, to focus on our own journey, and to find peace and happiness within ourselves. When we stop comparing, judging, or blaming, and instead focus on cultivating mindfulness, compassion, and understanding in our own lives, we discover a deeper sense of fulfillment and joy. Thanks for watching this exploration of Buddhist wisdom. If these lessons resonated with you, remember to take them with you as you go through your day. Focus on yourself, practice mindfulness, and find peace within. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to Moral Vibes for more insights into the Buddhist teachings that continue to guide us today. Until next time, may you walk your path with peace and understanding.